That eyesore has to come down, Mr. Hayes, right now. The voice cut through the morning quiet like a dull blade dragged across stone. I straightened up from the fence post I'd been reinforcing, hammer still warm in my palm, and turned to face her. Susan Whitaker stood planted in the gravel drive like she owned every inch of my 10 acres. Flowered dress stretched tight across her chest, arms crossed so hard the sleeves puckered, face flushed the color of overripe tomatoes. Her eyes were narrowed to slits of righteous fury, and one thick finger jabbed toward the far corner of my property where the silo rose against the oak line. "I don't care if you think we're still living in the middle of nowhere," she said, voice climbing half an octave. "This is Pine Valley Estates, a planned, tasteful community with clear architectural standards. That rusty old silo is an abomination. It devalues every single home around it. You have exactly 30 days to remove it, or the fines begin. And trust me, they will be substantial." She thrust a manila envelope at my chest with enough force that I had to take half a step back to keep my balance. The packet felt heavy, loaded with the weight of committee meetings, photocopied bylaws, and the kind of bureaucratic venom that only thrives in suburban power struggles. If you've ever crossed paths with an HOA president who believes their 3-ring binder is the final word of God, you already know the breed. Susan was textbook, self-appointed enforcer, convinced that harmony meant uniformity, and that uniformity started with her personal taste. Here's how a retired Air Force communications tech turned a 30-day ultimatum into the quietest, most complete dismantling of a neighborhood tyrant I've ever seen. I bought this land in the spring of 2006, long before anyone dreamed of carving Pine Valley Estates out of the old cattle ranches. Back then, it was just unincorporated county ground, rolling pasture, mature oaks, and a clear line of sight to the national forest 10 miles west. 20 years in uniform had taught me two things: how to read fine print, and how badly most people want reliable cell service when the nearest hospital is 40 minutes away. The valley had been a notorious dead zone. Dropped 911 calls, spotty emergency alerts, teenagers driving home from football practice with no way to text mom they'd be late. I saw opportunity where others saw inconvenience. A few phone calls to old contacts, one site survey, and I signed a 99-year lease with GlobalNet Telecom. They needed elevation and minimal obstruction. My high ground behind the pines was perfect. They built what the industry calls a stealth monopole, tall, slender, painted to resemble weathered farm silo steel. From the county road, it looked like the remnant of some long-gone dairy operation. Under 150 feet, well below most local height limits, even if anyone had care back then. In exchange, I received a generous annual lease payment that covered property taxes with cash left over, plus a direct fiber drop to the house. The tower went live in late 2008 and quietly bathed the entire valley in 4 bars of reliable signal. 15 peaceful years passed. Then the developers arrived. They bought up the surrounding parcels, platted quarter-acre lots, graded streets with pretentious names, Oak Crest Lane, Willow Bencourt, and erected row after row of beige 2-stories with 3-car garages. Covenants, conditions, and restrictions followed like a bad aftertaste. An HOA board was elected. Susan Whitaker, new resident with a talent for writing strongly worded emails, campaigned on preserving our investment and won the presidency in a landslide of yard signs and coffee clutches. For the first couple of years, I stayed invisible. My 10 acres sat at the end of the original county trail, buffered by trees and distance. But Susan's newsletter kept arriving anyway. Reminders about trash can placement, warnings about unapproved holiday lights, fines for mailboxes that weren't the approved almond shade. Eventually, her gaze drifted my way. The envelope in my hand contained the expected laundry list: non-conforming accessory structure, failure to submit architectural review, adverse impact on community aesthetics. Initial fine, $10,000. Daily penalty thereafter, $500 until removal. Signed by Susan as president, countersigned by Treasurer Brian Kessler and Secretary Linda Pruitt, her reliable voting bloc. I photographed every page, slid the packet into my files next to the original global net lease, and smiled. This wasn't going to be a shouting match. It was going to be an education. First call went to Michael Lee, my longtime global net liaison. Robert Hayes. Tower 412 is fine, but the new neighbors aren't. I read him the juiciest parts. Long pause, then the familiar half sigh, half laugh. One of those HOA crusaders. Your lease predates their plat by 15 years. The federal preemption language in Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act is bulletproof. They can't force removal of the only tower covering the valley without running afoul of Uncle Sam. Email me the letter. Legal will draft something polite but terminal. I hesitated. Hold off on sending it for now. I want her to dig the hole deeper. Another laugh. You're giving her rope. Enough to hang a Christmas sweater. You're rodeo Rob. Just don't get gored. I hung up and felt the familiar calm of mission planning settle in. Susan thought she was dealing with a stubborn old farmer. She had no idea the silo she despised kept her own phone working every time she called her sister in Denver or posted another passive-aggressive update to the community Facebook group. The next letter arrived 7 days later. Fine now, $15,000. Penalties retroactive. Tone noticeably sharper. Your continued defiance demonstrates a blatant disregard for the shared values of Pine Valley Estates. I filed it without reply. Silence is a weapon she didn't understand. Then came the public shaming. A laminated sign went up on the entrance kiosk. Community alert. Ongoing violation at 214 Ridge Trail. Non-compliant agricultural structure. Your cooperation is appreciated. No name, but everyone knew whose mailbox sat at the end of that road. As I photographed it, Brian Kessler's white SUV eased up beside me. Window down, cologne wafting out before words. Finally got the message out there, he said with a tight smile. We're just trying to protect everyone's property values, you know. I met his eyes and said nothing. The silence stretched until his smirk cracked. Susan doesn't back down, he added, almost offensive before accelerating away. That was my cue. Time to stop playing defense. I started walking the neighborhood at dusk, prime porch sitting, lawn watering hour. First stop, Margaret and Harold Thompson's immaculate rose garden. Evening. Those blooms are something else. Margaret looked up, clippers paused. Thank you. You're the gentleman with the silo. Robert Hayes. Just want to say hello properly. We talked. She showed me the notice they'd received for a garden hose left in a non-circular coil. Harold had been cited because their bird bath was slightly too teal. Both in their late 70s, both tired of feeling watched. Next house, the Martinez family. 2 kids swinging on a playset the exact color of wet cardboard. Used to be bright blue. Javier Martinez told me quietly. Kids loved it. Then the letter came, earth tone palette required. We spent a Saturday painting over it. By the time I got home, the moon was up, and I'd spoken to 8 households. Every single one had a story. Susan's power rested on making people feel alone in their frustration. I intended to change that. We held the first meeting in my living room a few nights later. Coffee, store-bought cookies, a whiteboard. Attendees, the Thompsons, the Martinezes, David Ruiz, retired Marine, perpetually oversized flagpole, and the Smiths, whose satellite dish apparently required a second-story neighbor's bathroom window to be visible. Stories poured out. Susan measuring a bird bath with a tape measure while the owners were at church. Noise violation for children laughing after 8 p.m. fines for holiday. Wreaths hung one day too early. Pattern emerged fast. Strict enforcement on anyone who'd ever question her at a meeting. Complete immunity for her inner circle. Brian's basketball hoop, explicitly prohibited, had stood untouched for 18 months. She's not enforcing rules, David said, arms folded. She's settling scores. Plan coalesced. Exercise our statutory right to inspect HOA financial records. We drafted a joint letter citing state nonprofit statutes, demanded full books for the prior 2 years, gave 10 business days. 7 signatures. Certified mail. While we waited, our encrypted group spreadsheet, Project Beacon, filled with timestamps. Every golf cart drive-by, every snide remark of the mailbox cluster. Building the paper trail. The response packet arrived on day 9, a disorganized stack of photocopies, most pages blacked out with marker. Fines account, missing entirely. Vendor payments, redacted. Meeting minutes, gap like Swiss cheese. Amateur hour. We zeroed in on the landscaping contract, the HOA's single largest expense. One unredacted check stub showed payments to Green Vista Landscape Services, LLC. A quick Secretary of State's search revealed the sole member and registered agent, Barry Whitaker. Susan's brother-in-law. Company formed 6 months after her election. No public bid records. Grass in the common areas was patchy and weed-choked, yet invoices showed premium rates. This crossed from petty tyranny into felony territory. I brought in Laura Bennett, the real estate and corporate attorney who'd handled my original purchase. After I walked her through the timeline, the redactions, the brother-in-law connection, she leaned back. Her plan had 2 tracks. Track 1, silo prepare, devastating cease and desist, citing tortious interference with my global net contract, demand immediate lien release and fine retraction. Hold it until maximum damage. Track 2, finances challenge the validity of the last board election on procedural grounds. Always easy to find flaws. Force a special meeting, then ask polite, devastating public questions. She also insisted on a certified boundary survey, pink ribbons, and steel pins marking every easement and my exact property lines. Costly, but unimpeachable. As the survey crew worked, Susan watched from her golf cart at the tree line. 2 days later, she called an emergency board meeting for 2 weeks out. Agenda: authorize litigation to compel removal of my non-conforming structure and ratify the lien already filed against my title. Her community-wide email was a masterpiece of spin. I was the selfish holdout endangering everyone's equity for my own stubborn pride. We countered quietly, door-to-door invitations. There's a special meeting about the gentleman at the end of Ridge Trail. Susan will present her side. We think everyone should hear the full picture. It'll be educational. I spent the next days refining slides. 2008 dead zone map, before and after signal coverage, lease excerpts, redacted financials side-by-side with Green Vista's business filing, survey plat showing the tower well inside my deeded easement. Final piece, I asked Michael for a one-time favor. I need remote command authority to initiate a 5-minute diagnostic shutdown on 412. Verbal auth code only. No paper trail. Long silence. That's a network control action. My VP has to sign off. Tell him the alternative is a multi-million-dollar interference suit if they succeed in forcing removal. 2 days later, approved. You'll have a direct NOC line and code. Use wisely. Show night arrived. The multipurpose room at the community center was standing room only. Susan's front row loyalists wore smug grins. The rest of the seats and the hallway were filled with curious neighbors we'd invited. She gavels in, pink blazer blazing under fluorescence. Welcome, everyone. I'm so pleased to see how many of you care about protecting the character of our beautiful neighborhood. She spoke at length about shared sacrifice, difficult decisions, leadership. Then she pivoted. Unfortunately, one homeowner has chosen to place his personal preferences above the good of the many. For months we've tried reasoning. Notices, fines, all ignored. Tonight, we vote to authorize legal action to remove this industrial eyesore once and for all, and to ratify the lien already in place. She pointed, not at me, at the back wall, as though the mere mention summoned the structure itself. I stood. Madam President, may the community hear both sides? 5 minutes. She faltered. Deny me the floor would look terrible. 2 minutes, she snapped. I connected my laptop to the projector. First slide. A few unanswered questions for the board. Name's Robert Hayes. I've lived here 20 years before most of these houses existed. I love this valley. That's why, 15 years ago, I partnered with GlobalNet to fix a problem we all shared. Slide. 2008 cellular coverage map. Huge red dead zone over the entire area. Some of you remember the dropped calls, the inability to reach help. This structure, next slide, photo of the silo, is not a silo. It's a disguised cellular relay tower. It's why every phone in this room works. Murmurs rippled. Your president has fined me over $25,000 and placed a lien on my home to destroy the infrastructure she depends on, along with every one of you. That violates my lease and federal law under the Telecommunications Act. Slide. Highlighted preemption clauses and global net support letter. But it's bigger than my tower. Next slide. Timeline of petty violations. The hose coil, the teal bird bath, the blue swing set painted beige. People nodded, recognizing their own stories. And where do all those fines go? I turned to Brian. We requested financial records, as is our legal right. This is what arrived. Slide. Side by side of crisp HOA letter versus their heavily redacted garbage. Gasps. Whispers. Perhaps the treasurer can explain the missing fines account. Or the vendor payments blacked out. Brian shrank. Or perhaps he can explain this. Final slide. Green Vista LLC registration. Barry Whitaker, sole member. Susan's brother-in-law. Could the board clarify why the largest line item in our budget goes, without competitive bid, to the president's family, while the common areas stay weedy? The room went electric. Susan banged the gavel uselessly. These are baseless. They're questions, Susan. Questions you've refused to answer in private. I pulled out my phone, held it high. Let's do a quick demonstration. Because words are cheap. I dialed the NOC speed dial, speaker on. NOC, Anna speaking. Anna, Robert Hayes, authorization Delta 94. Request 5-minute diagnostic shutdown, Tower 412, North Valley Sector. Confirm. Authorization confirmed. Shutdown in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Executed. A wave of phone screens lit up. Signal bars vanished. One by one. No service. Mine too. What the hell? A young mother stood. My son's glucose monitor. It's offline. An older man. My wife's alone. She just had knee surgery. I need to check on her. Panic spread like wildfire. 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. I raised a hand. This is what your board president wants to make permanent. Tear down the tower for aesthetics. Plunge us all back into 2008. For what? I looked straight at Susan. Her face had gone the color of old plaster. Still want to vote, Madam President? The room erupted. Turn it back on. Are you out of your mind? David Ruiz rose to his full 6'4". I move a vote of no confidence in the current board. President, treasurer, secretary, all of them. Seconded from 3 directions at once. Susan shrieked. That's not on the agenda. There are procedures. We're making it the agenda, Margaret Thompson said, voice steady for the first time in years. The vote wasn't close. Only 3 nays, Susan, Brian, and 1 holdout. The rest roared approval. I spoke into the phone again. Anna Hayes. Restore service. Restoring now. Chimes and notification pings filled the room like applause. I walked to the HOA's attorney, a nervous man already stuffing files into his briefcase, and handed him Laura's cease and desist. For you and your clients. Read it tonight. Carefully. He left without a word. The meeting ran another hour. Fines from the past year voided unanimously. Green Vista contract terminated effective immediately. Forensic accountant hired the next morning. The audit was brutal. Personal charges on the HOA card. Spa weekends, designer handbags, steakhouse dinners coded as board retreat. Fines funneled into an unaudited contingency account. Landscaping overbilled by 38% above market. Enough for felony embezzlement charges. The district attorney didn't hesitate. Susan and Brian were indicted within weeks. She sold the house at a loss to cover legal fees and restitution. The last time I saw her, she was directing movers, eyes averted, loading boxes into a rented van. She never looked my way. The new board, interim at first, then elected, stripped out the absurd rules one by one. No more palette police. No more hose coil citations. The Martinezes repainted their swing set sky blue. The Thompsons installed a bright ceramic bird bath. David's flagpole stayed proudly at regulation plus 2 inches. My days returned to what I'd always wanted: workshop projects, long walks across the acres, the low hum of the tower doing its quiet work in the background. The lease checks still arrive like clockwork. Every so often I glance up at the silo, tall, unapologetic, no longer an eyesore but a reminder. One woman tried to rule by fear and clipboard. A handful of neighbors, a little patience, and the plain truth brought the whole thing down. What do you think about the themes of injustice and abuse of power we see in everyday life, whether it's HOAs, workplace bullies, or small-town politics? Have you ever dealt with someone who weaponized rules to control others? Do you believe in confronting them head-on? Or is the slow, strategic approach more effective? Share your own stories or your take in the comments. I read every one, and I'd love to hear where you stand.